I think what you're going to see is it's going to be an entertaining team to watch. I mean, it's a team that as we get closer to season, we have a brand of football. It's going to be aggressive in all three phases.
Inside the Nest, an Atlanta Falcons audio experience. Here is your host, Craig Green.
Touchdown Atlanta!
Training camp is in the books. The roster is about to be set, and it's time to get ready for week 1 at the Benz. Welcome inside the Nest. I'm your host, Craig Green. Let's get into it. Today we're going to have a quick recap of the Pittsburgh Steelers game from last Thursday at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the last preseason game of 2023 before the real deal begins on September 10th. We're going to look at my prediction for the 53-man roster as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at that Steelers game. It was 24-0 Pittsburgh. They built a lead with their starters against the Falcons backups and did not let up. Nothing much to see here. Let's move on. So injury updates. Cordero Patterson, rehabbing, no timetable on his return. Kind of feel like he may be ready for week 1 and that Arthur Smith could be sandbagging because there's not a lot of specifics behind what's wrong with CP, but if I know Arthur Smith, he's got an ace up his sleeve, and Pt.4 could be ready for Carolina on September 10th. Jeff Okudah, the cornerback, lower body injury, still trending up, but no set date for return. Remember, Arthur Smith did say that he expected Okudah back in the early portion of the season, which is good news for the Falcons because when you see a player getting carted off, it's not a good visual whatsoever. The other big news of the past couple of days, as this is actually being recorded on August 29th, the day of the cut down to 53, Jalen Mayfield was released by the Falcons this past weekend. Mayfield, he was a third-round pick from Michigan at right tackle in 2021. They moved him to guard at first, then moved him back to tackle this year. He gave up 11 sacks as a rookie. Then he missed all of 2022 with a back injury. So he seemed to be improving, but perhaps the writing was already on the wall because of his poor rookie season and missing all of last year. So Jalen Mayfield finds himself on the street and available to the remaining 31 NFL teams if anyone is interested. Best of luck to Jalen Mayfield. So without further ado, we're going to get a little help. Once again, we're going to reach into the audio bag and get some help from Alan Bell and Roger Dexter's International Statement, a song you probably know well from NFL Primetime. Here is my shot at predicting the Atlanta Falcons 53-man roster. We're going to start first with the cornerbacks. I got 7 cornerbacks on my list that the Falcons are going to roll with. First, D. Alford, Breon Borders, Trey Flowers, Mike Hughes, Jeff Okudah, Clark Phillips, and of course, AJ Terrell. I feel like that is the strongest unit of the 7 guys who were in the training camp. Some of them are obvious ones, such as Okudah, Hughes, AJ Terrell, and I would say even D. Alford, but everyone else was either on the bubble, but ended up bubbling towards the top because of their play and their versatility. Breon Borders really showed himself to be valuable in the preseason, especially with that pick 6 in Miami. So the Falcons are going to roll with 7 cornerbacks to start 2023. Next, the defensive line. You know, the Falcons have players not listed at nose guard, nose tackle, defensive end, etc. They have you either as a defensive lineman or an outside linebacker. That's about it. So for the 5 defensive linemen, we're going with Calais Campbell, Taquan Graham, Zach Harrison, Grady Jarrett, and David Onyemata. Almost an obvious decision on at least 3 of these players. Zach Harrison showed his worth in the preseason. He was trending up. He was flashing. So he's going to end up on the 53, as will TQ Graham coming back from injury. was partnered alongside Grady Jarrett, mentored by Grady last year. Now they've got Calais Campbell in the building to help mentor Grady, who in turn will probably help mentor TQ and the other defensive players as well. So 5 defensive linemen to start week 1. 1 fullback, of course, Keith Smith. No competition for him, really. Inside linebacker, we're looking at Troy Anderson, Tay Davis, Caden Ellis, and Nate Landman. Yeah, Andre Smith was on the bubble, but I decided that I thought Nate Landman would beat him out because of his experience and because of his knowledge of what the Falcons are already trying to do. Kicker, of course, Younghoe Koo. Liam McCullough will obviously be the long snapper. We're going to go to another position group that had a little more competition to it than some of the others, which was offensive line. So you've got your 5 starters, which would be Jake Matthews, Matthew Bergeron, Drew Dahlman, Chris Lindstrom, and Caleb McGarry if you're going left to right. Now behind him was real competition. So in my eyes, the final 3 pieces were Jovan Gwynn, Ryan Newsel, and Justin Schaefer. So the Falcons will carry 8 offensive linemen to start the 2023 season. Outside linebacker, the Falcons will carry 4 OLBs into week 1. Lorenzo Carter, Bud Dupree, Arnold Ebiketie, and D'Angelo Malone. Punter, of course, will be Bradley Pinion. Now, quarterback, this was a tricky one. Would the Falcons carry a 3rd quarterback, have an emergency guy, or would they decide to just roll with 2? They're going to roll with 3. Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke, and Logan Woodside. And Woodside I fully expect to be someone who is going to be inactive for a lot of game days. Running back, traditional running back position, excluding Keith Smith, the fullback. Tyler Algier, Bijan Robinson, of course, Cordero Patterson, and Godwin Igwebuike. I thought Godwin showed his worth in the preseason. He ran hard. He was basically the Falcons' bell cow for the first 3 games of 2023. So Godwin Igwebuike earns his way onto the Falcons 53 and beats out Carlos Washington. At safety, they're going to carry 4 safeties to start 2023. This position was already kind of top heavy, and I felt like it was already decided some time ago. So you've got Jesse Bates, Richie Grant, DeMarco Helms, and Jalen Hawkins. It's a good position of depth for the Falcons because Grant and Hawkins were starting as youngsters early and often in their careers. Now you've got Jesse Bates to help out, and then now they've added DeMarco Helms on the back end. So DeMarco Helms is going to have some veteran presence in front of him at safety so he can kind of watch and learn. Now Helms had a pretty darn good preseason himself, intercepting a couple of passes and being around the ball quite often. So this position is one of strength for the Atlanta Falcons. Tight end, Arthur Smith, we know he loves the tight ends. They're going to roll with 5 tight ends to start the season. Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith, Michael Pruitt, John Fitzpatrick, and Parker Hesse. And wide receiver, also going to roll with 5 of those. Drake London, Mac Hollins, Kadero Hodge, Scotty Miller, and JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Tough decisions to be made on a lot of these players. Now, the last guy I had cut from the team, basically my 54th man for this roster, was Darren Hall. He was the last guy that I decided. Darren Hall was someone who was on the bubble, but I think the emergence and the rise of Breon Borders made this decision even tougher for Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot. And I feel like Darren Hall is going to be the odd man out and is going to find himself looking for another team to play for. All right, so that's going to end it for this edition of Inside the Nest. Had to get you that 53-man roster as quickly as possible, being that today is Tuesday and the teams will be cutting down to 53 by the end of the day. So I would love your feedback on my 53-man roster. I'll actually post the entire list online with a link to the podcast, and I would love anyone's feedback on my social media: Facebook, Instagram, X, Snapchat, YouTube, and Threads at Craig G Sports. Please like, subscribe, and download this podcast and share it with any Falcons fans you know. And we'll be back sooner than later with another Atlanta Falcons audio experience, most likely directly after the Carolina Panthers game. So until that happens, everyone out there have a good week and a half. Get ready for some football, and we'll see you very soon. Sayonara and buenos noches.